This is Elisa Johnston with Average Advocate and also Blackout Trafficking. Today is World Trafficking in Persons Day, and usually on this day people, give you profound information on human trafficking around the world. And I was going to maybe do something like that, and I just don't have the bandwidth to do something like that. There's already plenty of things out there on the internet about what trafficking looks like around the world. But what the internet cannot give you is why I personally am involved in the issue of human trafficking. So I thought instead I would go a little bit into that. So if you don't know what blackout trafficking is, it's an annual project or challenge that we run every single March, where people around the world choose a black item to wear, and they wear it every single day through that month, limiting their freedom just a little bit for the freedom of others, using it to fundraise and create awareness. And we partner with small other trafficking nonprofits where all that money goes, and it's just kind of cool to support them. And I've been doing that this will be coming on our 10th year doing that. And so I founded that back in 2012 accidentally, out of the frustrations of being a young mom feeling like she couldn't really do anything about any social issue. And which is kind of ironic, because at the time I was also part of a team founding another local human trafficking nonprofit outside of the DC area. But there was just that constant internal frustration in me, because I knew a lot of stuff about global issues. I had been studying it in college, and before that I had been exposed to a lot of things, having traveled and done missionary work and humanitarian work. And I felt very frustrated a lot of times, like all the time. I was very angry and depressed, and totally didn't fit where I was at. And so I was just kind of always bursting at the seams, trying to do these different advocacy things or activism. And I'm sure all my friends and family there, I drove them crazy, probably a little bit self-righteous. And there's one thing that I'm currently working on for you guys, which is called the 5 stages to rising up. You've probably seen it filtered throughout blog posts throughout the last 5 years, or maybe 4 years, because there's essentially this system, a formula per se, that people go through as they become involved in different social issues, and pretty much across the board. I've thought through this and tested this out with a lot of people, but they all pretty much go through these 5 stages when it comes to how to get involved in things and how to find your best fit to make a difference in those areas. So with human trafficking, it was the same kind of thing. I went through that first stage, and in that first stage, I was, it's where you become woke to something and awakened. There's that part of you that just it's like, whoa, this is real. This is actually happening. And even though I knew about trafficking before, it was in 2005. I remember I was babysitting for a friend. I was a newlywed, and I happened upon this documentary by International Justice Mission about sex trafficking in Southeast Asia. And I had vaguely heard about it, but not really, until I watched that, and I was completely blown away, because my eyes were opened. And I think that everybody goes through that phase with any type of thing. I see it right now across the board in the United States, becoming awakened to racial injustice, for an example, which is interesting to me, just to see so many people become awakened to something at the same time. And then the immediate next step is where people get really frustrated, to the point where they almost explode if they can't do something. And it's a very high stage, that's the one where people tend to be a little bit more self-righteous. Usually it forces them into action, and so they pretty much can't not do anything anymore. And that stage, the second stage, is where I feel like I lived most of my life in those years, outside of Washington, D.C., where I was so aware of so many different social issues, and I had been pushing in and learning more and more and more, but feeling so insulated. Sorry, I'm outside. Feeling insulated and not finding a way to do something about them, or not a good thing, not a perfect fit. And so I was doing all these early action things, which is the next stage, stage 3, where people start pushing into action steps, and they're never really a full-on action step that where it's this consistent area of volunteer work, but it's you're moving forward and you're going and you're doing something. This stage can also be pretty dangerous because, well, like the last stage, you end up kind of being in this frustrating moment where you might end up like blowing up at people because you feel so much anger. But in this stage, what ends up happening is that, and also in that stage, you can become very bitter. But in this stage, what happens is people will overcommit. So they'll be like, yeah, I'm going to volunteer for this, or I'm going to commit my life to this, or I'm going to start a nonprofit. And then, within a year or two, it kind of goes because people aren't really ready for that. This stage is really built up with a whole bunch of little actions and little social steps, like signing petitions and maybe going to protests, or maybe reading more books and talking with friends about it, and creating neighborhood groups that do something, or leading a study on it. Just different things like that require action, donating money, but aren't like really heavy yet. Because if you get into the more heavy things before this fly is killing me. So anyways, I think that in that stage with human trafficking for myself, I realized I found myself doing a bunch of little things, like I was saying. Like I was writing things on my blog here and there, I was donating here and there. I ended up being put on this team, and ended up eventually leading it to start this other nonprofit. And that's kind of where things started switching until I moved into stage 4, where I was really beginning to find a place consistently where I could be like, yeah, I care about human trafficking. I do something about human trafficking. Ironically, this is the weird thing about stage 4, is that everybody at this point is like, oh yeah, this is what you do human trafficking. And I was like looking around me and people would be asking me to speak or whatever. And I was like, how in the world did I become an expert on human trafficking? Like, why? Like, it would just seem strange to me because I would have never really pursued that, even though I didn't like human trafficking at all. And the more I learned about it, the more knowledge I grew, and the more I knew how to do something about it. And I did things that didn't work well, and I learned things that did work well. And in that time period, all the experiences that I had added up to me having more knowledge on it and more wisdom on it than the average person. And so because of that, yeah, I could be sought out as somebody who could guide people to do something about human trafficking. Although at stage 4, you tend to become a little bit more indifferent, because by this point, the high and the passion is just kind of like evened out, and it just becomes part of your identity. And in stage 4, that's really where I found myself. I was like, oh yeah, this is what I do. I do stuff about human trafficking. It's not all of who I am, but it's a huge part of who I am. I'm Melissa Johnston, and I do things about human trafficking. And that's when people would be like, this is Melissa Johnston. She's super passionate about human trafficking. And I'm like, I mean, I'm passionate about it as in I want it to go away. And so it's interesting because usually when you see people that have kind of begun to make that, whether purposefully or not, or unintentionally, where it's become the thing that they know about, it just becomes part of your lifestyle. You do something about it because it feels wrong not to do something about it with the connections you have and the information that you have. And sometimes that can feel a little bit of intimidating coming from people. And I know for myself, my personality type is I'm an Enneagram 7, or ENFP, and so I tend to like to move around and try different things. With spiritual gifts, I'm apostolic and prophetic, and I want to move into different places. And so I've had various friends, especially the people on the blackout trafficking team, who are like, no, Elisa, you're going to stick in this a little bit longer because we need you to lead us. We need you to be in this place at this time. And it wasn't that I didn't believe in the mission of doing things about human trafficking. If anything, now I believe in it more than ever because I've been involved in things where I've seen change. I've seen people become set free and be able to live normal lives and move into like being just a human and not like suffering from trauma constantly, and seeing that trajectory that people can go through, where you're like, wow, we actually can do something about it. Or prevention. I mean, if we can prevent human trafficking, then gosh, that makes it go down drastically. Or like the power of purchasing, or different things that I've become involved in, laws, like been part of changing different laws that affect human trafficking or gave freedom for human trafficking to happen, and now in those areas that's not happening anymore, and people are becoming aware of it, and awareness, gosh, like just having people be like, I think trafficking might be happening, and they'll call me and be like, hey, I would have never seen this, but now I've seen this and I know it's happening, and who do I call? And I'm like, oh, here's a hotline, or here's a connection. So the thing is that I've seen us, you and me, making a difference on the issue of human trafficking. So I believe in it. I believe that it's important. And on this World Day of human trafficking and persons awareness, I'm sorry, I'm dyslexic. I can't say anything in order. On this day, I can say that your efforts and you getting involved, whether you're in stage 1, 2, 3, or 4, or maybe you're in stage 5, which I'm not covering right now, which is probably the stage that I'm in currently when it comes to human trafficking and finding my place to make a difference in the world. And that one is specifically about becoming really intentional with your time and leading in it and knowing how to be wise and what things to give your time to. And that's where I offer life mapping. It's usually stages 3, 4, and 5 are particularly interested in it because it helps you kind of balance that. And really, in stage 4 and 5, you kind of need it so you don't burn out. Okay, so going back to before the stages, I was saying that I think it's really important that you're involved in this issue. And I know that it might not seem like you're doing very much when you're in stage 3, or when you're in stage 4 and you're just bursting to, or 2, when you're in stage 2 where you're just like bursting to move and act like many people in our country are about racial issues right now. They're all in stage 2. Tons of people are in stage 2 right now. And you see that burning passion, just give me something to do. And I know some of you are in stage 2 right now when it comes to human trafficking. I had a friend last week who was like, I don't know what to do, but I need to do something. I'm done with inaction. And people that I know that are in stage 3 where they've been like, I've been doing blackout trafficking a few years. I've donated money. I bought these products that were fair trade, and they've been doing these little things over the years, and they might not feel like it's valuable, but it is valuable because I can stand on the other side and say, hey, I see this. And if you need to be on the other side to see that your actions are making a difference, then come on the other side and I'll talk with you about it, because if you don't feel like if you don't know that, if you're not going out of your way to read stories or walk alongside people or reach out to the nonprofits who are working hard in the anti-trafficking realm, then you might be really struggling with that, and then you will just kind of slow down and maybe even quit or step out of the game. But don't quit and don't step out of the game. At some point, at stage 4 and 5, it just becomes part of your lifestyle and a part of who you are. And it becomes something that is important to the world as a whole because we're making a difference in those areas and in those ways. So that's all I was going to say today about trafficking World Persons Day, and just a little bit of my story and how I've been involved in that and what I've been doing over the years, and why, even if I'm not like bursting with a flame and standing on top of my roof saying, hey, let's do something about human trafficking, although you will see me do that every February and March as I prepare for blackout trafficking, which I hope this coming year you'll join us in doing. But I still care. I still care a lot, and I know that it makes a difference when we step up and do something. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about those stages today because I didn't want you to discredit where you are, because where you are is still important and it's still valuable. And I think that and you'll continue moving up in those stages, and hopefully I'll have some guide for you sometime to help you navigate that a little bit better. But in the meantime, just keep hanging in there and don't give up hope that there's a place and a purpose for you to be involved in the anti-trafficking movement, because the people who we are advocating for are real people. They're not just numbers. They're not just 30 to 40 million people who are enslaved. They're real people, and we can make a difference in just one of their lives, or maybe in hundreds of their lives, or maybe we're just creating a more just society where less trafficking is happening. But you're important in that place, and that's all I really want to say. So that's Elisa and a little bit of her story of going through the stages as she's been doing stuff about human trafficking. All right, talk to you later. Oh, and also, DM me if you have any questions. I'm usually willing to talk quite a bit on Instagram Messenger. All right, bye.